Today's training. It's nice to connect with you guys today. So, looks like we've got some connection fun going on, so we'll see how that works out. So, good morning. Nice to see you guys. Before we get started, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents find and reconnect back to their happiness after codependency. That's my big goal for my clients and students. And I also run a very successful community where we provide shelter and support to those confronting codependency, confronting neglect and abuse, narcissistic abuse specifically. So you're welcome to join that. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And I need to share this out to the community. So I'm going to be doing that right here, right now. Let me know in a comment below how you guys are doing with everything, because I know there's quite a bit happening out there. How your day is, what you're doing with the COVID situation, things like that. So, okay, so this morning, this was inspired by this morning's shower, actually. I was sitting in my shower. I like to sit in a dark shower because then there's no visual stimulus and I can meditate and enjoy myself for a moment. And my brain has been pelted with a lot of these, I call it should or elsing. And basically this is, you should be doing this or else this will happen. It's a way we intimidate ourselves. It's a way we shame and compel ourselves into reactionism, reacting to things that aren't real. Because your thoughts, frankly, guys, aren't real. Your thoughts aren't truth, facts, or reality. They're actually just thoughts. And when we really connect with that, there's a lot of freedom we gain with that. It's a lot of contact back with actually what is real, what is going on, what is happening for us in the real world. And so I was sitting in the shower and I was going a lot of shoulds or elsing, shoulds or else. And that's just that mental threatening. And so I started practicing this thing I do called thought observation, where it's like, oh, that's just a thought. That's not a fact. That's not reality. That's not the truth. And then the else showed up, and I'm like, that too is just a thought, not a fact, not reality, not the truth. And my body and mind immediately start to calm themselves. And that's because we're getting back in alignment with what is real. Because I have found on an extremely consistent basis that if there is something accurate about the thought, that I'm not going to calm when I do that. Instead, I'm going to become more aware of what is really happening. And there's like this honesty that enters my awareness that goes, hey, yeah, this isn't just a thought, Marshall. This is something we need to look at. So there's a way to start discerning thought from genuine concern or awareness. And part of that's the lightness and the heaviness that show up, the calm or the agitation that persists when we do thought observation. So when you're dealing with this mental shoulding on yourself, this mental threatening of should or else, something's going to happen, step into the idea of observing your thoughts. Treat them as thoughts, not because they're not facts, truth, or reality. When we start regarding them that way, then our own intuitive awareness, our own honest connection and grasp of reality starts to show up. And that's where we can find a lot of mental peace. We can get out of the hypervigilant loop, out of the pressure to be or do something. Because like a lot of my shoulds were like, Marshall, you got to keep showing up the same way you always have. You got to be very concerned about, pleasing people. And if you don't do this and you're not like that, then this won't happen and this won't happen. Lots of threats going on there. And I was like, wow, look at all these thoughts. Once I caught into the idea that these were just thoughts, because sometimes we got to wake up to it still over and over, like I do. And that's connecting with, hey, this is just a thought. It's not the truth. It's not reality. It's not a fact. And this allows us to expand into a world beyond what we think we should be doing and getting more in contact with our own inspiration, our own voice. And this leads us into an interesting discomfort that shows up. Because when we're following ourselves, we're going to be grinding against a lot of programming. It's gonna be a rough friction there. We're gonna butt up against our fear of rejection. We're gonna be butting up against the fear of conflict and contradiction. Maybe we've changed our point of view and now we contradict something in the past. And ultimately, disagreement and difference. And a lot of times, difference is villainized. Difference is seen as a problem that has to be fixed. And that is a product of narcissistic systems. Narcissistic systems and people want uniformity. They call it uniformity. They call it uniting. But in reality, it's conformity. They expect you to shift and change yourself, shape yourself to their expectation, to their demand, so that they don't have to confront what they're doing, so they don't have to be accountable to their emotional needs and to their emotional regulation. They want you to do that by becoming what they want you to be so they can feel whatever they want to feel and do whatever they want to do. So as ex-codependents, one of our big challenges is becoming tolerant of difference and tolerant of the discomfort of stepping out and doing you and following your path and your guidance. And this is important because your intuition, your guidance, your points of view are only for you. They are never for someone else. The reason why is because intuition for you is only for you. It's not for anyone else. You have to be real mindful of that. Is that other people are autonomous and they will choose and do what they want. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be scared of what you're doing, but it does mean that you got to confront yourself and go, hey, I need to make a change here because all this shoulding is pushing me to feel burned out, for instance, or it's pushing me to do things that don't bring me joy. Well, what do I need to change? Well, first thing we often need to change is letting go of the shoulds, breaking out of that and getting connected with ourselves, back to listening and sensing and receiving into our own awareness, and then we start to follow that. Okay? Very, very important, because that's where we start to find more of our joy. This is where we find what we want to do rather than what we should do. Very big differences there. I mean, take a moment and listen to how that feels for you. Having to, I should do this versus I want to do this. And see the difference in how your body responds to those two things. And that right there is going to give you some inspiration, some guidance about what's happening within you, and tune you more into your voice, more into what's true for you. Because typically, if we're doing what we want to do, we're going to find more joy, more inspiration. But if we're doing something we should do, it's going to be heavy. Because shoulds are typically external expectations or programmed expectations being imposed upon us. We think we should do that. We got to hold to it. What if that's not true? What if doing what we want and following our own guidance is where we're going to find our happiness, where we're going to find our, maybe we're looking for love, maybe we're looking for wealth or success or companionship or a family, that kind of thing. Well, what if following our inspiration, our joy, is how we actually get there? But a lot of times people are like, I've got to do this, and I should do this, and I should do that. They're trying to control the outcome through those things because their programming is dictated to them that that's how you get there, which isn't true. And this is kind of that friction I'm talking about. When we start to follow our voice, we're going to do things a different way. And people aren't going to like it. People are going to be confused by it. People are going to maybe even sometimes be alarmed by it. Especially people who've known us for a long time. Now, this is a great opportunity to build intimacy with these individuals and connect with them and say, hey, yeah, I get that I've changed. I get that I'm doing things a little differently here, and that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me too. So let's be uncomfortable together. And let's explore that together, because I'm reaching out into my own universe, to my own world, to understand me a little more by following me rather than following all these shoulds, all these pressures, all these demands that I should. I'm following what inspires me. Now, this invites people to become part of your team, and it brings people along, and it shows trust. It shows a genuine appreciation for the relationship and for what's there. And that's a huge leap. That's a leap of vulnerability. It's a leap of transparency. And that's important, especially for us ex-codependents, to get in contact with that power of being vulnerable in a way that invites people to connect with you rather than vulnerability and hoping that we're seen and valued. It's one of the hardest shifts to make, is to use vulnerability as a filter rather than as a means to trying to be nurtured by someone who's we want nurture from. Now, we can have that, and that's asking the right person for what and how we want it. The right person is a person that shows up in healthy ways, that gives a shit about how we feel, and that has proven that they're both willing and available to contribute to us in a way that's nurturing. This is not about asking an abusive person or a person who has proven themselves to be abusive in the past for something that's vulnerable and delicate to us. We need to be very, very, very conscious about whom we ask and for what we ask from them. We got to ask those safe people for what we need and what we want, rather than just hoping that, abusive person that I've had a relationship with will suddenly give a shit and care. No. Now that is a codependent fantasy showing up. We want to be very, very conscious about that. Further, when we get into shoulding, we get into these kind of mental loops of compelling ourselves to be and do and have something. Depression and anxiety tend to show up pretty intensely. And a lot of times we don't really realize or see the relationship between our mental loop of should or else and how it motivates depression and anxiety within us. Because I know for me, my depression and anxiety are hugely influenced by this mental loop of should or else, because it puts me into a state of anxiety and fear, like, oh yeah, if I don't do that, then this will probably happen and I'll be in trouble, or I'll lose a friendship, or the business will fail, or I'll disappoint a student or a client, or blah blah blah. I don't even know if that's actually going to happen. I haven't tested it, right? But we get tied up in these fears and we get consumed in them, and that fear just amplifies my anxiety, and then the depression sets in because the body doesn't feel like it can escape, so it goes into kind of a freeze. So this should else or else loop is a big factor in our mental health and our emotional well-being. The more we can catch it in our thinking and then discharge it by becoming the observer of the loop and actually respecting it for what it really is, which is just a thought. It's not a fact, it's not truth, it's not reality. And we can return back to connection with ourselves and start that friction of following our path despite what what our programming says we should do or what other people say we should do. That's where we're going to find a lot more joy long term. I mean, I know when I'm in high anxiety, this loop's in the background. I probably can't hear it at that point. So when I slow down, I start to see it and I start to practice that. And my anxiety drops and sometimes entirely vanishes. And then the depression lifts because now I'm not in that state of freeze anymore. And I can shake it out, kind of discharge all that energy and get reconnected back with me, back with my voice and my action in the world, my contribution. So this is how we handle this kind of thing. It's also a great way of discharging the hypervigilance that's encoded into us because of the chaos loops that abuse and neglect put us through. Because then you can start catching that. Because a lot of times those hypervigilant loops come in as shoulds. Shoulds or else are threatened. These like little mental threats we give ourselves. When we start capturing that and observing them, then we become really free of it. We can get more in contact with ourselves, and then we can lean into trusting that aspect of ourselves. We become ultimately free and secure that way. Laura says, I literally try to micromanage my thoughts and emotions in an attempt to manipulate the outcome with delete that will help. Yeah, yeah. See, let's talk about outcomes. Let's talk about this. This is a good thing. We have a fear of outcomes. And technically we have a fear of the meaning of the outcome. We think that it means something. So if I don't do this and person A is upset with me, that means something about my value. It means something about my worth as a person, about who I am. It could mean all sorts of things, my future, my well-being, my family. There's all sorts of threats that come with it. And this struggle is encoded in us because we've been living in what's called a transactional value system, guys. When our sense of worth can be threatened by what we do or do not do, we're living in a transactional system, period. But when we retrieve our value from that and we say, I'm not putting my value up on this pedestal, I'm not putting it on the chopping block, I will no longer allow it to be threatened by these transactional things other people expect of me. I'm going to preserve it. Now we're back in our power. And then we can start to confront the real issue, which is someone else's demand upon us. This idea that we need to please them or serve in a certain way to get a certain result. And when we have our anchored value within us, then this ends the fear of the result and allows us to connect with it. So results become a filter for us rather than a judgment. So if I'm doing something and somebody else just doesn't like it, oh no. They get to live with it. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to regulate it for them. Because guess what? My value first, my world, my territory, I do what I want. They don't like what I'm doing in my yard, then maybe they should start paying attention to their own yard. Now, if I'm in their yard doing something, then they have authority there. They can tell me to get the hell out and stop. And that would be a rightful thing to do because I shouldn't be in their yard. But if I'm doing things my way, I'm creating in my terms, I'm serving my world and my happiness on my terms, and they don't like it, boo-hoo. I don't have to change for it. Now maybe I'm in a relationship with that person and they're like, Marshall, what you're doing, I don't like. Then I could say, okay, tell me more about what your experience is. Well, when you do this, it doesn't feel good to me. I'm like, am I doing it to you? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay. Is it affecting you directly? Well, no. Okay. So I understand that you don't like what I'm doing, but if it's not directly affecting you, and it's not violating an agreement we have, I'm not imposing myself on your yard, then maybe it's time to disconnect your judgment from my yard. Now, sometimes loving friends will step in and say, I've got a question about what you're doing here. I've got a concern about what's happening here. Can we talk about it? Yeah, let's do that. Because now they're respecting my territory, they're respecting my choices, they're respecting what I'm doing, and they are also expressing and respecting the love they have for me. And that feels like I'm being seen, and there's a desire to understand, right? Now, if you're doing something that violates or changes an agreement with an individual you have, then you need to talk about it with them. That requires an openness to things there, because we have influence and impact on others. And healthy empathy dictates that, hey, we want to be mindful of that impact and respond to that in a loving, caring way, right? Because that's kind of the point. So, yeah, just like that, Marshall, the struggle is so difficult for it. Yeah. Now, extracting ourselves from other people's expectations and from these shoulds and these threats of or else can be a real challenge. Now, the key here, and this is what was funny in the sitting in my shower this morning, is when I retrieved my value from it, and then I started to trust in myself, a lot of my anxiety immediately vanished. My brain became calm and focused, and I was okay. Because I have my power. And I would be, and I've gone through this, this is a very personal thing. When I've changed things in my life and people have decided that that was not something they wanted to agree, that they they didn't agree with it, so they left my life, or created smear campaigns against me, made me out to be an evil person, things like that. That hurts. But it didn't change me. I changed me. Their behavior revealed to me their relationship with their own pain, their own shame, their own fear of losing connection with me, their own fear of themselves and their suppressed elements as well. Because a lot of times what we fear in others is really what we're fearing in us. Someone steps out and becomes powerful, for instance, in their world, and we feel rattled by that and scared. We might be fearing a loss of importance and connection in their life, so we can reaffirm that by connecting with them. But we may be also encountering our own suppressed power and our fear of that power, our fear of our own autonomy, maybe the fear of being left alone because we're who we are. That's a huge fear, especially in transactional systems, because love was weaponized. It was used against us to control and keep us in conformity, rather than being liked and wanted for who we are. Okay? Because connection-centered relationships and systems, they like us for who we are. They want us to be us. They enjoy who we be. And they teach, and in that system we learn to enjoy who we are, to like who we are, and to want ourselves, to want to be ourselves. That's the power here with that. So this is the journey, guys, to discovering, owning, and experiencing who we are. Okay? So take a moment throughout your day, throughout this week, connect with your awareness, see how you're shoulding or elsing on yourself. Watch out for those mental threats. Move into a practice of observing them because they're not the truth, reality, or facts. And also give yourself permission to let the outcome happen without putting your sense of worth at risk. You can take that back and own it and let the outcome hit. It's like, okay, I'm going to keep me because I want to know the truth. I want to understand reality. I want to see what's honest here. Now, sometimes we need support. That's okay, because this is not about isolation of self. It's like, I would like a family that's got my back. I would want friends that have my back, that there's loyalty and there's a willingness to understand me as I grow, and I would return that to understand them as they grow. We need that, and we deserve that. So that would be another step in bringing in those kinds of people into your world. Have your back and love you for who you are, and then building connection and relationship with them, and then leaning on them when you need a little support and a little shelter in your journey in being you, because the world certainly hates it sometimes, but a lot of times you're going to find people who really love and appreciate you for you and your courage there. So guys, remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. Take this into the world. Let's see what it does for you. Let me know what you get out of it. Keep yourself safe, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye-bye.